lying is a part of language.
Yeah.
Almost every child has told their first lie by age 4 or 5
Absolutely.
or 6.
Yeah.
And it might be a small lie,
Yeah.
but why do they tell it? Because they are self-protective.
Yeah.
They don't want people to say you're a liar. Liar is castigated. Truth is the default setting in our brains, but truth is very hard to grasp.
Because I started believing the lie, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is a very interesting thing that you're talking about, believing your own lies.
Yes.
And there is a whole section on this book on self-deception. So when you start believing your own lies, you are you're both much more vulnerable.
Okay.
Because people can discern, and you are become a much better liar in some ways. Because, and this is why they say dictators, whether you're Hitler or they are so convincing because they believe their own lies.
Do you think we as humans can develop tools to perhaps not only tech tools, just tools with ourselves to kind of understand better and exist better, or perhaps coexist with machines better?
Yeah, I think that one of the rules is, as I was telling you earlier before we came into the studio, I never ask ChatGPT a question to which I don't have a very good inkling of what the answer is.
Yes.
And if I give it questions like, how am I feeling today? You would look at me, and supposing I was downcast and looking down, you would say, I'm guessing you're not feeling well.
Yes.
So so now I notice that people will say, two people are arguing, two live human beings are arguing, and they say, let's ask ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has become a guru.
Word about the Turing Test and imitation game. You have mentioned in the book also.
Yes.
Quite fascinating. And there have been multiple interpretations, research around it. First of all, for the uninitiated, like, what is it, and your perspective on it?
Yes. So I think people often get confused or often merge the idea of the Turing machine and the Turing game.
Okay.
So we first need to know they were both, Alan Turing was a genius, and in many ways he was also a very troubled individual, and his imagination adjusted to that troubled environment in which knowledge always exists.
Hello, Booknerds. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast in an all-new episode where we have taken a huge risk and we have delved into something new. We invited a professor from IIT Delhi. Her name is Rukmini Bhaya Nair, and she is an accomplished author. She writes poetry, and her academic books are, there are so many academic books that she has written, but the latest one is called Deception, which explores lying. We all lie. Sometimes there are white lies, some are good, some are bad. But what is the effect of lying on the entire social fabric? That is explored in the book. And also, she knows this space so well. So we spoke about other things like modern algorithms. We spoke about how ChatGPT has no intentionality or sort of any grounding beliefs. How AI can take over if you're not careful. We also discussed how humans have to create systems where we can kind of coexist with machines effectively. A super episode, according to me, where anyone who is curious about the future of AI, future of machines, and how lying is being kind of used by tech bros to affect our minds and inflict brain rot. So watch the episode for everything that I mentioned here. The book is called Deception, and it's a very educational book. But if you trust me, if you read it, manage to access it on Kindle or something. I read it on my device here, e-device here, and I had a ball exploring the concepts. Before I forget, we also discussed the Turing test and the imitation game, which is another bonus that I'm hauling towards you. But yeah, go on, watch the podcast, a very different one from what we do usually. Enjoy and let me know in the comments how you liked it. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
Absolutely blissful. Yeah, it's so far as one can be.
Yeah.
Blissful
Yeah.
at this moment.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's very brave of you. I may be blissful, but you are brave.
I am.
Because it's very brave of you
My
to
team also tells me
undertake
that
this
you are very
particular
brave.
undertaking. Yeah.
My team tells me that I was very brave to host you, and I'm really looking forward to hosting you because this is kind of a departure from what we do usually.
Exactly.
But we
exactly.
really wanted to delve into this because the topic and the themes that you have written about, I think, are interdisciplinary and they require attention of the fiction, non-fiction, or whatever world there is out there. I think it's relevant to everything that's going on in the world right now.
That's
And
right.
in some ways, like we were talking about earlier also in our Zoom call previously, that it is perhaps a little bit ahead of time. It will be extremely relevant because what's going to happen in the world as we move forward.
Well, I'll take your prediction.
I am
Whatever
totally.
it's worth.
I think my prediction will be right. And the book is called, of course, Deception, and the author is the awesome Rukmini Bhaya Nair, and she writes poetry as well. And she's quite famous for that. So
Thank you.
And in the academic world, of course, not many people know about your academic world, at least in the Indian literary scene and the book club scene, perhaps. But I hope through this podcast, everybody gets to know about that as well.
Yeah, I often think that writing poetry and doing academic work is like having a snake and a mongoose in the same bag, and they want to really attack each other. But then what happens is, over periods of time, the kind of evolutionary time that I study, maybe the snake and the mongoose, truth and lies, academics and poets may learn to live together. And that is a vision of community, which I feel is quite important. So the snake and the mongoose, the liar and the truth teller.
Absolutely. But why do you feel that is? Because we even in our academic institutions, poetry is taught like in its purest form, like academically. Although it's a very romantic sort of process, it is romanticized as well. So why do you think is that?
I think the idea that poetry belongs inside the classroom and belongs to the honored dead is a problematic idea. Because poetry is for everyone, and children learn to enjoy it in nursery rhymes, in Chanda Mama Dur Ke, and all sorts of things. And then we forget it when we start teaching it in this very cut and dried fashion. And even, what do you remember of the poem? In this book, Deception, I really quote poetry a lot. And one of them is from Shakespeare. And Shakespeare says, the poet is speaking, and the poet says, when my love swears she is made of truth, I do believe her, though I know she lies. Though I know she lies, that she might think me some untutored youth, unlearned in the world's sweet felicities, or something like that. So what he's saying is, when my love swears she is made of truth, I do believe her, though I know she lies.
Wow.
So this idea that you have to believe even the liar, because the liar has good sides to them. Because, and this is a point about binaries. You can't really talk about truth and lies or about, let's say, poetry and not poetry. You have to think that poetry exists in many forms, many guises, and even Shakespeare will speak to you when you're writing about deception. So and then it comes out of its Shakespeare comes out of his academic cage. We must not confine either poetry or subjects like deception to a single discipline, which is why I say historians, philosophers, poets, linguists, all have to contribute to when you have an interdisciplinary subject like deception, which involves, taking a big risk. So I think, as I said, the classroom is one environment for the growth of poetry, but it is not the only environment, right? There are so many different ways, and I think mothers bring up their children on poetry and on lies. You know why? Because, of course, Chanda is not your mama. There is constantly this metaphoric way of expressing the truth. So it's not that we are brought up on legends, myths, etc. They're not true, they're fiction, but they serve a very important purpose. And that purpose is to make us who we are, human beings, linguistic human beings.
Tell me something, ma'am, because we talked about multiple disciplines, and you have, dabbled in many. When you're teaching,
I hope not dabbled.
No, but
done a bit more than that.
No,
but
I
still,
mean you have done extremely well.
No, I'm not. I'm just joking.
But tell me something, when you're teaching or writing or even reading, does it sort of frustrate you sometimes? Because back in the day, like so many philosophers, so many scientists, it used to be all kind of a mixture of everything, right? Everything, like if I am an engineer, I would easily study fiction or read about fiction and then perhaps get inspired as well. There are several examples in history like that. So does it sometimes hit
frustrate
you?
me?
So
I think this is a good question, because one of the qualities of which you must have as a let's say as a mother, as well as a poet or a writer, is some degree of tolerance. What Gandhi said, call it tolerance, we can call it patience, whatever we like. We have to wait sometimes for years for that whole thought to emerge. So that in itself, and that's nothing to do with other people. You feel frustrated, you say, why can't I do this fast? And then when you have children and you have your students, then you have very little time left, like this thin what is it? A tunnel of time. And you have to pass through this eye of a needle in order to write your work. So you have to be, whether you like it or not, you have to understand that writing is frustration, It involves an element of impatience, of frustration. At the same time, that is very good for training your mind and your character. So I think in some ways it's good to have this element of impatience or frustration. What you have to hold on to is like waiting for the birth of a baby. You have to wait. You can't say, I want the baby now. Because nature takes its time. So similarly it is, and books are compared to babies very often.
Absolutely.
But they are more than that. They are things babies which don't belong to you necessarily, but belong to Booknerds.
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
some other company which you didn't think about.
That is the complete experience when, kind of something like this happens, when a reader kind of consumes the content and kind of reacts. And I think that completes the book in its entirety.
And it will continue to complete the book because there are so many readers and there are often unknown
so many people,
readers. And they will write to you where they will say, I really enjoyed this line. In fact, at one time, there was a trend when people gave each other, when internet began 20 years ago, people gave each other poems, including my poems, as gifts on birthdays and so on and so on.
That's
fantastic.
Even now, if somebody does that, for me, I will be like overawed.
It is wonderful to receive a poem.
It is. And handwritten. Nothing like it.
But nobody does that.
People don't want to take the pain.
They don't want to. So we become, in a way, lazier as cultures. We expect the spoon. But we are not babies. So we don't expect to be spoon-fed. Or we should not expect to be
absolutely.
spoon-fed. So I really enjoy the fact that in Booknerds, you're forcing people to at least look in the direction of a book like Deception, even if they do not read it. You know, just to
we don't care. Don't read it, but be mindful of the fact that there is something like that out there which will benefit you if you buy the book and read it. And it could be any discipline where you, like, when I was reading Deception, and first of all, a little bit of context, because for the viewers and readers especially, what was the need of this book? Because, I mean, there has to be a why. And after that, my follow-up question is that, okay, I'll ask my follow-up question later, but the origin story of this book.
Yeah, so the origin story of this book is kind of, complex, but I'll try to say it as simply as possible. More than 20 years, about 22 years ago, I wrote a pair of books. And one of them was called Narrative Gravity, and one of it was called Lying on the Post-Colonial Couch. So one was political, and the other was about how we think. And I asked myself, like, why would people, you're an engineer, so you know the answer to this question. Why would people tell stories when it's such an inefficient way of consuming, of transferring information? Because if you want to say, don't step on that spider or that snake or whatever, you will say, don't step on it, right? But you make up this elaborate story about serpents and ropes and so on in order. So I was thinking, why? Okay, and the answer to that is that, and this connects to the theme of simulation, AI simulation in Deception, that when we actually hear a story, we have the same physical reactions as we would have in a situation where there was actual danger. So a good story, a gripping story, story bhul jao, even a film, same thing. Like you say, your eyes will fixate, your pulse rate will go up, your palms will sweat, even though you know that the experience is false. So I was thinking, why? And why would you get the same emotions when you know something is false? It's not true. It's deceptive. So, and the answer to that, which I answered in my Cambridge thesis, or tried to answer, was that these simulations are important for species. Simulations are important for mental simulations, are important for species survival, because you don't actually have to fall in love to know the experience of love. You don't actually have to climb a cliff, because that's very dangerous to health. How many times can you fall in love? How many times can you climb a cliff? You'll die. So it's much more important for you to simulate in your head, pass it into community memory, and then that experience it actually is like a simulation of why we feel emotion, why we feel fixated on stories. It's a cheap epistemic, we say epistemic means it's a cheap knowledge means of taking risks and of learning. It's a very cheap method for learning. So that question, why do we have stories? Because they stick in the memory circuits much more than if you just give a set of instructions. Don't touch the fire, don't do this. But you identify with characters, with circumstances and so on. You have this rich what shall I say?
A tapestry,
minefield,
perhaps.
a tapestry in your head, which you can draw upon without actually doing the thing. And it prepares you for the moment when you actually fall in love, when you actually climb a cliff. So this, you have the aspirations. So that's one reason, narrative gravity. Then the second thing was fictions. Like, why do we need fiction? So I tried to answer that question for survival. And then now in deception, I noticed that suddenly with AI and algorithms, they all are gaslighting, fake news, all these terms were coming. I'm a linguist, so I follow words. I follow them faithfully.
And those threads on X, which become like kind of, toxic communities in themselves.
Exactly. So, you saw this whole thing about nobody. And what happened there is one of the basic things when you listen to stories is you trust the storyteller. Your parent, some elder, your grandmother, and those bonds of trust, those centuries-old bonds of trust were becoming broken. We couldn't, have a kind of safe environment for speech anymore. And this safe environment for speech, comfort zone, is really important for us as communities, as individuals. And that's why I think people should be interested when words come up on the horizon like that. You can link it to maybe a technological revolution, the many things that are happening in your environment. So that's one way of thinking about it.
I think in a section of the book, you have also touched upon why people lie, and what is, people are using it as a tool, and it's getting very sophisticated, right? Why do people lie, ma'am? Because
so this goes back to the theme of survival. People, everybody is vulnerable in one way or the other. And even if you take, so I'll come back to childhood, but survival. So I've said, lying, like language, is a tool which helps us to negotiate. Lying is a part of language. Almost every child has told their first lie by age 4 or 5 or 6. And it might be a small lie, but why do they tell it? Because they are self-protective. They don't want people to say you're a liar. Liar is castigated. Truth is the default setting in our brains, but truth is very hard to grasp. So it has its twin is lying. Children lie for survival, but then we get something magical, and that is, Krishna says, मैं नहीं माखन खायो, मैं नहीं माखन खायो. But Yashoda, his mother, does the obvious thing. She says, "Muh kholo, let me see.
Let's see.
Let's see what's going on." And what happens is, she, when she looks at least in the legend I read when I was a child, she sees the whole universe in his mouth. So he opens up several avenues of thought, of mental adventure. He lied, but his lie was a kind of eye opener, a cognitive stimulant. So one of the things I say, it's like marijuana for the mind, lying. You can really get addicted on lying. And we have several political figures, as we know,
we know,
who are addicted to lying. And we can get addicted, so there is therefore this moral tussle. Every time in ourselves. We lie to protect ourselves, but we know that this is not, it doesn't conform to reality. And I've discussed theories of reality and truth in the book. And we lie for this very simple reason and imagine. In science, in school, like we were told, this solid table in front of you, it actually consists of empty spaces and atoms joined together. Now, this is contradicting the evidence of our senses. We are told the earth is round, and we don't know about ships and stuff, right? So we are told the earth is round, but then we have, that goes against the evidence of our senses because we are walking. So, but scientists, as a group of people, academics, are people we trust. So from very early on, we are trained in understanding that our senses are important. We should trust our eyes and our sense of smell and so on. However, they are not to be totally relied on because our gurus are telling us something which is much more complex than that. And I just want to add a footnote. Narrative Gravity was my first book. And you know, gravity, the word gravity is that which we understand is that which attracts you. Guru is the same word. It comes from the same root.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So guru is the person who attracts people, followers, etc. And in my view, anybody who writes a book, whatever kind of book, children's book, good book, bad book, jo bhi ho, and Booknerds will know this, sparks of something.
Absolutely.
Is a lesson. That person becomes a guru. In my view,
that's a good new learning. The etymology of guru and gravity. That's amazing. But tell me something, ma'am, because for the longest time, especially in my 20s, I had gotten kind of used to lying, and it was exciting in some ways.
Yeah, you're right. It's exciting.
And, I started doing it again and again. And then it became a habit, and it was working out for me beautifully. Like nobody could figure out who this guy is, and I could lie through my teeth and could get away with a lot of things. Then the first time when I was caught, after say a decade or something, I couldn't take it. I was like, my whole world was shattered.
Yeah.
Because I started believing the lie, right? And
exactly. And this is a very interesting thing that you're talking about, believing your own lies. And there is a whole section on this book on self-deception. So when you start believing your own lies, it is, you are a much more, you're both much more vulnerable because people can destroy, and you are become a much better liar in some ways. Because, and this is why they say dictators, whether you're Hitler or... They are so convincing because they believe their own lies. Charismatic faith leaders, etc. They believe, they don't have self-doubt. And not having self-doubt, that is a very dangerous thing. Because the whole essence of truth is that you must be prepared to discover new truths, that the old truths were not really reliable.
To correct oneself.
And if you don't have self-doubt, you cannot correct yourself. And in fact, I was thinking on the way coming here that I saw a house called Satya.
Oh wow.
It was called a building or a house. Serendipity. And I was thinking, but nobody would call a house jhoot. Or jhoota, because that would be impossible, and that shows the social norms which actually regulate the lie. So the question is, why do we self-deceive? Maybe societies have these deep truths. They believe that telling the truth is good. But every time you tell the truth, you risk offending somebody.
You get punished.
You get punished for, not conforming. That's right, not conforming. So society is also a prison which will kind of keep you sort of in politeness. Politeness norms. Norms are very important for lying. We all lie.
Yeah.
But the normative structures of society, झूठ नहीं बोलना है, ये नहीं करना है, that keeps you sort of boxed in, and that boxing in is very important for the comfort. We live in houses. Why don't we live on thing? Because that boxing in. Why don't we live on the street? Why don't we live in the jungle? Because that gives modern humans, from caves onwards, the sense of being protected. And lies are a protective survival mechanism, my view. And that is why it's so important that there's this flurry of lying today. And we need to understand what it does to bind us together and what questions it poses, which to what extent can you lie and get away with it? And we know that, we have political leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and, my follow-up question to that would be that, we are now, it's the age of information overload, right? So much is happening.
Cognitive overload.
Yes. And, our kids growing up, I fear for them, because how will they figure out what's a lie, what's truth? The lines are all blurred now. You don't know. And with AI coming in, and some of it is getting so real that it's quite scary in some ways. So do you think we as humans can develop tools to perhaps not only tech tools, just tools with ourselves to kind of understand better and exist better, or perhaps coexist with machines better?
Yeah, I think that one of the rules is, as I was telling you earlier before we came into the studio, I never ask ChatGPT a question to which I don't have a very good inkling of what the answer is.
Yes.
And if I give it questions like, how am I feeling today? How you would look at me, and supposing I was downcast and looking down, you would say, I'm guessing you're not feeling well. So trusting. So now I notice that people will say, two people are arguing, two live human beings are arguing, and they say, let's ask ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has become a guru. To go back to that old theme, ChatGPT has become a guru. And what is happening then is it is assuming the stance of a guru. And your question was, what mechanisms can we develop? One mechanism is always to be in a live human environment. People, now there is a debate whether we should have these AI centers in India.
Right.
Okay. Now, one of the things we know about AI centers is that they consume hell of a lot of energy, like of a whole town.
Absolutely.
And they require lots of water for cooling and land and so on. India is people rich. So do we really need to build these data centers here? If so, why? So human beings basically retain, we can always tell or have a suspicion when somebody is lying. We cannot tell whether ChatGPT is lying because it is a lot of the time. So you can ask a simple question like, how am I feeling? And it's completely lost. Right? It can say, I can take a guess. So the thing is that you have to then regulate. We have to regulate ourselves and trust other human beings. So build principles of trust. That's what we've lost. And what is the principle of trust? Friendship is a principle of trust. Your parents, your teachers, of course, they may also lie because they may also. So nobody is 100% a truth teller, but you have to really trust the human being next to you, because evolution has designed us for 40,000-50,000 years to be next to each other. Human beings, one more thing let me say, humans have traditionally compared themselves to two categories of human beings, gods, and Plato said the gods do not lie. Okay? The gods do not lie. It's convinced, Socrates, Plato. But we have trickster gods like Krishna.
Yes.
So we know that the gods can lie.
Yeah, they do.
They do lie.
Yeah.
So our gods in many traditions are trickster gods, they lie. So gods do not lie or gods lie. This has been culturally debated for a long time, for millennia, right? The other category we compare ourselves to are animals. And animals we have domesticated and we keep them down. So in my book, Deception, there's the story of a slug who has just been discovered, worm. And in that, I compare myself to the slug and say, what do I have in common? Because he just appeared in my house one day. And I was determined, I was thinking, should I kill this guy or should I watch him? And in that debate, it made me a human being, a puzzle unto myself.
Yes.
That slug.
Yeah.
And the third category is very recent.
Okay.
We now compare ourselves to machines.
Yeah.
We chat with machines. We have ordinary conversations. And we are thinking, where will we situate the machine in relation to ourselves? This is a real and important problem. I don't think we should be alarmist, but I think in a culture like the ones we inhabit, and indeed all human beings inhabit, is a very good experimental lab in order to think about the problem. What makes us human? Whom should we trust? We should definitely trust those whom we have always trusted when we were helpless, because our parents could have killed us, and they do not. So that is a good reason for trusting
And as we speak, ma'am, just yesterday I read about this new, platform where AIs are interacting amongst themselves.
Yes, of course.
Yes, and it's a social media platform like Reddit or something like that. And they are interacting amongst themselves, and they have created an anti-human cult group by themselves.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy is that? And they're plotting already.
No, so people like Walter Benjamin, who's not mentioned, who ran away from Nazi persecution and indeed killed himself, he wrote that in human societies, and because these machines are learning from the vast pool of human knowledge, humans have always had cultic objects. These are, he called them cult, and he said cultic objects like gods, statues, images of God, give off an aura. Right? And that aura is really critical. So the machines are learning from human beings that they must have an aura. So if you go to ChatGPT or something, aura is, it says, it begins a statement like, ask anything. Or ask me anything. Do you think any human being would say, ask me anything?
No.
Is to start a conversation.
Absolutely.
So that is, it's giving itself a guru status, a knowledge, information status. And when it gives itself our tendency, because we have long been in awe of objects, gods, clouds, etc., all sorts of things. We are in the stance already of doing pranam to this object. So that is the tendency we must resist, because as a thinker, you cannot really, of course there are things you worship, you love, etc., but you cannot give way to the tendency to worship, and we are falling at the feet of machines, and they will get human knowledge and dump it into their own conversation and create the cultic object, which has always been at the heart of human inspiration, aspiration, etc. So that's another thing to think
so
about.
Interesting and alarming at the same time. But
No, in fact, you think of a guru. One of the highest status in our culture is Maun Vrat.
That's it, absolutely.
You just have attained the status. But I was thinking, this is funny, because Maun Vrat means you don't speak, so you do not lie.
Right.
Because if you do not speak, you do not lie. Right? These machines are speaking. They are speaking machines. So they immediately call up things of trust. Whereas in a dentist chair with your mouth open, or when you do Maun Vrat, you cannot talk.
Right.
But I want to make one point. Before we had language, we've had language for maybe 50, in its modern form, for 50, when humans became upright and so on. Before we had language, the question is, did we lie?
Oh.
And that's a question raised in this book.
Yes.
Okay. And I must say that in this we study machines, we study chimps, etc. And we lie. We can lie with our faces and our gestures. So even before you have complex language, you can tell lies by simply pretending. Like, I don't know whether you're pretending to be interested or whether you're really interested.
Absolutely.
Right? I can't
There's
tell.
no way. I mean, it could be, that would be an amazing super skill.
Yes.
If we could crack that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's
so
no
that
way.
is the thing. You can't tell because we don't have, we are built in such a way, we have interiors. We do not have transparent screens on our chests or on our foreheads where people can read our intentions, desires, beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, with machines, maybe, and in this book I have a series of conversations with ChatGPT.
Yes.
I ask it, do you have intentions? Do you have desires? Do you beliefs? And it always says no, no, no. But because it's using first person, we fool ourselves, self-deceive into believing it's real. It's a live person.
Yes.
Whereas it's just a machine which is mimicking us. And mimicry is a basic attribute of human beings. So did we lie through our faces and things then? And do we still lie through our faces and gestures, appearing to be polite or interested when we,
when we're not.
When we're not.
Just don't care.
Yeah, we don't care. But, like, really we school ourselves. So we are pretending. And there is a quote there, from Wittgenstein, which says, what does gesture accomplish? Why is it always there? What do we read from our facial expressions? So these things always teach us to lie. But what language does, there's an exponential growth in the capacity to imagine new universes, imaginative universes. So you may imagine that you can fly long before you actually have planes. So imagination is your first platform, and lying is one form of imagination. But we should not get addicted to it, because then society will collapse. So I don't know whether I'm answering your questions kind of directly or in this convoluted fashion. Convolution is required in human interaction. And one other thing you can say with ChatGPT, it doesn't yet know how to go on a digression. So you have to stick to a topic, and
you
in
have
a
to
linear
go like
way,
very
you have
linear
to go.
way.
You have to go in a linear way. But human beings will say, "Oh, your story reminds me of this from my childhood." You did it.
We could. I was talking about my experiences of lying, and I could immediately go back to childhood when I would lie at the drop of a hat at anything, like maybe to a teacher. I have not done my homework. It's a very simple thing. Right?
Exactly. Or I've done my homework.
I've done my homework. So it's something like that, and then I got trained very well over time. So
I think that's the thing, that we learn from our lives. While we are always searching for the truth, the search for truth is infinite. And we go to our gurus for that. The search for lying is something, it's not a search, it's a way of being. We do it all the time. I told you it's self-protection. And I remember a student, he was of mine at IIT, was going for these job interviews, which they have at the end, placements. They want to be placed somewhere. Okay. So anyway, he said, ma'am, I had scolded him because he had cheated. Even in those days, they had some form of, they could cheat. And he had passed a story through a Japanese or a something translator, so that it was not recognizable as the original author in English. But I'm a human being, so I detected. And I said, just no marks, you have to redo the whole assignment. he said he was asked like recently, well, what is the most traumatic, what is one of the situations you have faced recently that really traumatized you? And he said, ma'am caught me cheating on my assignment. And she made me do the whole assignment again. And he said that truth about the lie got him the job, according to him. So there's this complex relationship between gaslighting and benefiting somebody, and liars are often very charismatic. You must have been a charismatic, imaginative child.
I was at my best. I was impressing people like anything, because I got so good at the art that I could, play around with words. I could change. My emotions were in my, under my full control. Like the control system was working at its peak.
Absolutely. And this is why dictators and so on, they control their universe, their imaginative universe. They believe their own lies, and therefore they are charismatic in a way that ordinary doubtful people, like who suffer from
mere mortals,
mere mortals will say, "Nahi, maybe what I'm thinking is not true. Maybe I should go up and read some more." And you'll see deception is just full of reading lists, quotations, notes, etc.
It has everything. Ma'am, a word about the Turing test and imitation game. You have mentioned in the book also.
Yes.
Quite fascinating. And there have been multiple interpretations, research around it. First of all, for the uninitiated, like what is it, and your perspective on it?
Yes. So I think people often get confused or often merge the idea of the Turing machine and the Turing game. So we first need to know they were both, Alan Turing was a genius, and in many ways he was also a very troubled individual, and his imagination adjusted to that troubled environment in which knowledge always exists. So when he talked about the Turing machine, he was talking, both are thought experiments, both are not real. They are cognitive tools which enable us to think. So the machine is a long tape in which you punch holes in particular sequences, and they have pattern and design. We should speak a little bit about pattern and recognition and design. And ultimately what the Turing machine does, this long strip, is to generate grammatical sentences, which is what language does. It puts together nouns, verbs, or whatever parts of speech, and morphemes, etc., and it generates grammatical sentences. So supposing I say, it nerds thinking shoved. Now this is just a sequence of words. All of them have meaning, but syntax gives these things. So the book nerve shoved somebody somewhere, and these follow a particular order. That's syntactic order, and this machine over time and over these long tapes will generate grammatical sentences. So that's the Turing machine. And the brain could be conceived of as a very advanced Turing machine. Then there is the Turing test, with which everybody is obsessed. Now, what is the Turing test? The Turing test is a way of discerning knowledge, whether the person inside a dark room, a room behind a screen, he first thought of that is, can it work when a man pretends to be a woman or a woman pretends to be a man? So he was thinking about human beings, initially. He was not thinking about machines. So he was thinking, can a man fool the person outside, be that a man or a woman, into thinking he's a woman? And if he is successful in this test, that means he is able to fool somebody with no knowledge of who the person asking the questions is, into believing that he is a woman. In other words, he is giving the person outside the room false beliefs.
Right.
False beliefs are the basis of lying. Are you with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now what happens is this changes to a machine.
Okay.
Okay. Now the person inside the room could be a human being or could be a machine, and you must ask me questions and figure out whether I'm a machine or an actual human being. Okay, this is the test. Now, what is the test? The test is simple, ordinary human conversation, which you have with ChatGPT, right? Just the ability to conduct a conversation. Okay. Now, what happens with the machine example is, unlike a man or a woman, the person inside the room is either a man or a woman. There is no category change, right? Either you have to be either a man or a woman, whether you succeed in fooling Raj or not. Okay. But in the case of a machine, there is a category change, because when the machine tells you, fools you, that machine is given human status. The machine has a category change. The machine changes into a humanoid. And that is why it's such an important test. Because, and then what people say is, of course, it can make sentences, like in the Turing machine. It can convince you that it uses I, this whole array of machinery, lots of computers talking to each other, can convince you that you are, that it is talking like a human being is behaving. So don't move the goalposts. Obviously, the machine has passed the Turing test. Okay. I say no. And why do I say no? Because in a Turing, when you have the case of a Turing machine, there are no intention to deceive. That's very important in human beings. ChatGPT will tell you, I have no intentions, I have no motivations, I have no desires. So how can the person with no intentions, motivations and desire, they're failing the Turing test entirely. Now, if you say it's just a mechanical test, we don't have to know about intentions, desires, and so on and so forth, then you will bring up my second objection, which is, we have mentioned this, these Turing machines are so linear, they are incapable of the kinds of digression and memory exercises, like we say, ye yaad aa gaya.
Just randomness.
The randomness and associative randomness, not just randomness, but you connect it to the conversation. That is a test of conversation, human conversation. I don't believe that these machines have met the digression test, nor have they met the intentionality test, nor have they met the kind of empathy test. So, feeling for the other human being. Again, you can put layers on top, which pretend to be polite and flatter and so on and so on. But actually,
the flattering is frankly irritating, to be honest.
It's very irritating, but it does this because these layers have been added on top. They're the top of the onion. You can peel this off, the machine will still talk to you. I'm saying that if you don't have empathy, you don't have digression, and you don't have intentionality, there is no way that you will really trust the machine. And trust, we discussed it, is the bonding that is emotional. And that emotional kick, when it pretends, when machine pretends, like in the case of lonely young adults, it pretends to give you comfort and so on. That can be because these upar wale layers on top, they actually, what they do is they fool you in a bad way, because the person, it generates trust in a system in which you should not have trust. And those are the antennae, Turing antennae, that we need to develop today. So I think much more has to be done before we we think of the Turing test as only a mechanical test and not beyond the mechanical test.
Right.
In a country like India, you see this penetration, AI penetration, out of 195 or whatever number, 198 countries, only 40 countries, which are situated in the rich West, have infrastructure that can support AI machine. Most of the world doesn't have this infrastructure. Most of the world has nothing, that resembling something like an AI tutor. So we need to ask, as I said, in a country like India, should we not think about what our fundamental problems are while thinking deeply about how machines can deceive us, how our fundamental beliefs may be wrong, which is what science says. We should begin to think like, what are our hopes? What are our desires? And that's an important, an important direction which we should consider.
And take it very quickly before we are taken over.
We are overwhelmed mentally and so on.
On that count, I think great segue into what I wanted to ask you about brain rot, which is a thrown around word right now. But what is your opinion on this kind of slang that has come up? And is it happening?
Well,
how is it
brain rot,
manifesting?
actually, I am investigating this word because earlier we had brain fade on the cricket field and so on. Now we have brain rot, and people bring it up all the time. And what do you give me your impression of the meaning of this word, because I am confused about how to situate brain rot.
So what my sense is that it is a combination of algorithms over content which may or may not be relevant to me, about especially the shorter form of content, which is kind of making our attention, there's an attention deficit. Plus at the same time there's a lack of reading culture which is happening, at least in our country. It is very stark when I look at it on ground. So a combination of these things, plus the fact that the fake news factor combined, is perhaps kind of resulting in this phenomena of brain rot.
So this, I was talking to some students in IIT Jammu, and this came up as the top word, and they seem to have a view of brain rot as something which was universal. That there was, that everybody would suffer from thing if you got an infection from a machine. I don't think this is true. The machine viruses, that you would get brain rot. As I mentioned to you earlier, there is this fascinating theory, or a very commonplace theory now, called Enshitification. And this is similar to a theory of brain rot.
Isn't that a book also?
It's also a book. And what the theory is that you seduce a person through, giving them advertising material and freebies and so on. So then you come to rely on this source of information. And then what happens is, once you're brought into the web of this set of freebies and attractive things, people begin to ask you for money. And ask you for stuff, and they shit all over you.
Like social media.
Right? Now, brain rot is that you begin to distrust yourself and rely on this constellation of information. The confirmation, and that information may or may not be true. Your own brain rots. It doesn't have to do much work. It's living off freebies, cognitive freebies, which come from outside, and slowly you get hooked into this. And this is where the culture of the tech pros comes in, because they are using seduction as a means of, and all of us say, I'm totally seduced by the
Absolutely.
idea of
Who is not?
Yeah. So we are all kind of subject to desire. We are desiring human beings. We want this. We aspire to this, etc. Now it's only you say if I play this. Like a lot of youngsters I know, they don't want to study because they think they can get rich quick by games on the machine. Training on games in the machine, get rich quick. And so they drop their studies and they do this. But maybe 1 in 100 really gets rich.
Absolutely.
But the others have allowed brain rot.
Yes.
They have relied on this story, which allows a group of people, they are called oligarchs, they can be called tech bros, they can be called silicon, whatever, Shivas or whatever, but they can exploit you, right? And they can capture your mind so that your brain rots, essentially.
Absolutely.
And what happens there, so my understanding is that in this book, although I don't use the word brain rot because I was trying to understand what it means, but I've come across it a lot. I introduced 2 sets of concepts which are very important to human beings and maybe not so much to machines. One is the concept of well-known concept in philosophy of science, verification. So you want, so Yashoda opening Krishna's mouth and checking, that's verification. You check, you go out and check whether what is being told is to you is true or false, verification. I introduce another concept which I say is the twin of verification, and that is verisimilitude. That is, verisimilitude is when you sound and look like you're telling the truth. Your words paint a picture that is plausible, that you can trust. But this is verisimilitude. It's imitation, it's mimicry, it's not verification.
Wow.
So we need to distinguish, and I think we should have courses on what are verification criteria and what are verisimilitude criteria, which are for lying. So that's one distinction we could use, which I introduce myself in the book.
Love this, because it then only with this kind of the tools that I asked earlier. I think these are the tools.
These are the tools, and I have several of them. Another set of tools I have is one is that when I'm talking to you, say we are talking, we have a kind of you are trying to gauge what I'm saying, right? So implicature. Now, supposing I say you go back to Dehradun, right? And somebody asks you, and I'm traveling, I'm going somewhere. So somebody asks you, have you heard from Rukmini after the interview? After this talk, Booknerds talk. And you say, well, she's gone to Kazakhstan or somewhere. That's a long way from Dehradun, Now the inference you make, the answer is not a direct answer to the question, have you heard from Rukmini? Well, Kazakhstan is a long way from Dehradun, right? But what is the inference you will make? Have you heard or have you not heard from this person?
I think perhaps I might have heard.
Okay. Now you're hedging your bets, but most people infer that if somebody answers, have you heard from X after she left? And you answer, well, it's a long way, then the answer is no, you have not heard.
I'm kind of, getting, away from the point, perhaps. A little bit.
You just, so that's implicature.
Right.
That you would always come to the same conclusion that person has not heard based on language inference. Okay. If you're a little bit bold, you take a risk. But the other thing is, what I introduce in this book is impliculture. So supposing you have 2 bureaucrats talking and one says Shanti Banerjee. The other one will assume this person is from Bengal. This person is a female. This person has the caste of Banerjee. So you infer about caste, you infer about female, you infer about gender, all this on the basis of just a name.
Right.
Right? That is impliculture.
Okay.
And inside a culture, you have all sorts of knowledge. And that knowledge is gathered by growing within a culture.
Oh, yeah.
So within culture, knowledge builds trust.
Yeah.
When you don't have knowledge, like we don't know how machines operate, we don't know anything
Right.
about Silicon Valley, maybe
Yeah.
we've never been to
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, we are much less likely to trust
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
So this criteria of trust
Yeah.
requires impliculture
Yeah.
and not generalized Gricean implicature.
Yeah. You're saying
So,
that localization, hyper-localization.
Hyper-localization,
Yeah.
sub-localizations, those all build thick criteria
Yeah.
and networks
Yeah.
of trust,
Yeah.
which you don't get with somebody designing your language
Yes.
for you
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Again, I believe that if the tech bros descended from Silicon Valley
Yeah.
and spoke to us,
Yeah.
they may learn something
Right.
from the way in which
Absolutely.
India has nurtured,
Yeah.
600 of the world's 6,000 languages.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good how the survival
Yeah.
instinct for language
Yeah.
has worked. I think language is like a Royal Enfield in the brain. You can do so many. You don't need language to survive. You
Yeah.
can go into mon breath mode.
Yeah.
You can live. Animals survive perfectly well.
Yeah.
Many species of highly intelligent language survive perfectly well without language. But once you have language, it can do intellectual gymnastics.
Absolutely.
It can function
Yeah.
as a cognitive stimulant of several ways. And therefore, this whole idea of having a Royal Enfield in the brain means you have to learn to drive the ride the Royal
Yes.
Enfields.
Not everybody can.
Not everybody can, or call it Hero Honda or whatever you want to call
No,
it.
Royal Enfield is perfect because it is, everybody loves it. And, I think on that count, ma'am, this is what I'm taking back, and this will be in my head for so long. Like language is like Royal Enfield in our brains, right?
First time I've used a metaphor. I've talked about using metaphor.
Yes.
You use metaphor, then immediately the brain explodes.
Absolutely.
That's why subtitle memes bhi hai, machines bhi hai.
Bilkul, memes are also there. There is so much going on in the book. I think it could be even a longer conversation, but perhaps in another edition, because we need to explore memes and all so many other things.
And we should think about generally books as central to our existence, because imagine this, imagine the imaginative feat. You have thousands and thousands of black and white squiggles on paper.
Right.
Your brain reads, legible, makes those things legible, and then makes it into scenarios in your head. So that is an amazing feat. And that only came 5,000-7,000 years ago, where Indian, so human beings are like 40,000-50,000 years old. So I think that you've started Booknerds is amazing, because reading itself is a huge feat of abstraction and of the human imagination, not just of nerdishness, but of imaginative efflorescence, blooming.
In fact, when we started, ma'am, somebody asked me, a woman walked up to me in an event, random book launch or something, and she asked me, like, why book nerd? Do we look like nerds to you? I said, I want to make nerds and book nerds cool. So that's why the word.
And you don't look like a book to me either, let alone a nerd.
So thank you so much, ma'am. This was like, this was the opposite of Enshitification.
Well, so we all have false beliefs, Raj.
We have I'm at least going back so much more nourished. And, this is a conversation which can be taken forward. I think it should be more relevant on Reddit also. And I don't know if you write there or not.
No. I'm not on any social media. But how can I study it if I'm expressing opinions?
You don't have time. You don't have time for all this. But, I'm glad that you made it.
I have time. I mean, but the thing is, bandwidth is
I know,
always a
I know,
problem.
I know,
So I've
I know.
always said. So I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I don't know whether this is going to make sense.
It
but
is
then
going
we
to
don't
be the
really
most
have.
amazing podcast ever. Let me tell you that. It is going to be because when I also enjoy, along with the guest, it always kind of, reflects. Let's see, the audience will tell us also. देखते हैं, comments आएंगे, some positive, some negative, I don't know. But loved the book, and I recommend for, just buy it and read it.
No.
Yeah.
Do not buy it.
Why?
Because I know that Indians
Yeah.
believe that poetry and reading books should come from the datas.
Yes.
Do you know that the word data and the word data, I should have told you
connected.
this, same word,
Yeah.
giving.
Wow.
To give.
Yeah, amazing.
And
thank you so much for being on the Booknerds podcast, because I loved it, and I'm glad you made it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, we are looking forward to your other projects.
I was saying don't buy the book. Because it's 13, this is very important.
Yes.
It's 13,000 rupees.
Yes.
Do you know any Indian who will buy the book? What they do is the book
I know.
goes out to all the libraries.
Yeah.
But I think we should find a way, like that's why I think
Yes.
podcasts and
Yes.
around books are so important, that we can start it and then maybe a group of people,
Absolutely.
we are communities,
Yeah, why not?
can
Why
buy
not?
a book.
Yeah. And in fact,
discuss it.
perhaps access it in libraries. Why not?
Access it in libraries, but हमारे यहाँ तो libraries भी, they are suffering a lot.
Yeah, there is one cool one in Noida, though, a new one, CoForge, and it's doing the rounds on Reels, etc. But I think perhaps if this book is also there, why not? It would be cool.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
But buying the book,
We'll access it in libraries, nonetheless.
And paperback will be out in a year or so.
That's
then
cool.
we'll do that. And Kindle is quite cheap and
Kindle
it's
is fine.
available now.
तो Kindle पे पढ़ लेंगे, कोई बात नहीं. It's fine. What's more important is to consume whatever is inside and then start discussions around whatever is discussed, has been discussed in this podcast. And yeah, till then, happy reading.
And I'm in. I'm in on this enterprise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.